50 patentes mundialmente para el rociador utilizado en muchas aplicaciones. Hoy ofrecemos más de 4,000 productos y servicios para irrigación. Cuando lo necesitan, más eficiente que nunca.
¿Sí está llegando bien el sonido? Sí.
Más o menos. We are going to talk about some sports projects with a urban improvement done by specialists. I see that nearly everybody speaks Spanish, so if someone has any questions, we have subtitles in English and Spanish, and if you have questions, we can answer them at the end. The session will be recorded, so we can view it subsequently on social networks and on the association page. Welcome, and thank you for being here. My name is Arturo Peniche. I'm an architect. I have over 20 years of experience, 12 years of experience in the company called Petra de Portan with engineering projects, and we have developed over 500 spaces throughout the lifetime of the company. So we're going to talk about how this session is going to work, and we'll talk about the products and all of the scope that you may have with our products. So we'll begin. The first part will pursue three objectives I want you to focus on, which is the selection of the synthetic surface. Many times we hear that there are many diverse products on the market that are sold for surfaces, synthetic surfaces for parks, for recreational areas, or for sports. However, nobody tells us that these surfaces, what the qualities and durability or what the features are. They simply sell it to you and that's it. We don't do this. We are in the complete advisorship. Secondly, the ratio of lifetime and cost per square meter. Sometimes we see a product that is more or less expensive, but there's no real comparison regarding what is cheaper or more expensive compared to what. And finally, the possibilities. This is the most important. What possibilities are there of us as a company or specialists giving you a comprehensive project in relation for your needs? Breaking news. Why do we continue to select surfaces that don't last? This happens every day. News 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. It doesn't work. It lasts 3 months. We rehabilitate it and Sullivan and Los Cabos in Mexico and different projects that we see that every day these surfaces are not durable. Precisely to see companies that don't do that. They're not specialists and that don't have the experience or the capabilities or the products to be able to make this durable. So what happens? We have a company, let's call it Rubber Duck. This Rubber Duck company has a running track around an urban park with an investment of 1,200,000 pesos. These surfaces are based on 2,500 square meters, in which we see that they're going to have 1 year of durability, as we saw in the previous slide. If we divide this cost into 12 months, the monthly cost will be 100,000 pesos. So what happens with our company? It's going to cost you 2 million. Yes, it's more expensive indeed, but we have a written guarantee for 8 years. This will guarantee that your monthly cost is less than 25,000 pesos or 21,000 monthly. This allows you to determine which is more expensive. Well, the one that's more expensive is the one that doesn't last, the one that you have to redo in a year or 6 months or even after a week in the previous slide, which happens every day. So this is a small comparison of a cost benefit for each one of you. Classic, keep calm and call de portan, or keep your calm. We can give you advice on everything that you require. So let's talk first about who we are and then into the topic. We're a Mexican company, the most long-lasting in the market, 30 years creating sport surfaces, pioneers in this systems known as Tartan. It's the company that began all this in Mexico. We didn't have these systems, and we have made progress. Then we registered our Deportan brand, which focuses directly on parks, sports areas, and for kids play areas and so forth. This is the scope of the brand that allows us to give support in this area. We have other areas of opportunity, which is our Petra company, and we are working also with Heirico. Heirico is a company that is new, but they are doing all the art aspects, innovation, and other spaces that can be used within these recreation areas in these parks. First taught on a running track, which is how do we create a running track into a public area in a park or a functional area? How can they be integrated? So first we need to understand what we need to do. We want a running track for jogging. There are different things. A running track is an area where you can have you can run around a space, and this area has for brands or recreation. This is more sports focused. In parks, we have jogging tracks and running tracks, and these are different paths that you can run through your park. And we use two essential products for this, and we have a great advantage. The seals at the bottom. Point number one, we have over 200 installed projects with our products all throughout the Mexican country. And at the bottom, our product is certified worldwide, internationally, before World Athletics. World Athletics associates all of the sports areas worldwide. So our products and our projects, many are certified internationally with Mexican labor and Mexican products. So what can we do? I have a project here, for example, where they used painted concrete, poorly placed asphalt, and they have a painted surface or an area which is not as functional as we would like it to be. So what do? We do this. We create a comprehensive project with a trotting path with a proper development of the entire park and have a synthetic durable surface. Another example, we have concrete, which lasted 2 years with concrete, and people ran here, and we need to seek these possibilities of how to improve urban spaces. So we improved it this way. This is Shimbak Park, which is in Campeche. So our product can be in a cold region like Querétaro or warmer and moister, and it works. One more, we're in Mexico City. We have a jogging track that lasted less than a week in a linear park, and this running track lasted 1 week. Now we have worked on it, and it has gone over 5 years. It was rehabilitated effectively, so we can see a lot more. Now let's look where we call playgrounds. Very similar. We have infantile areas or playgrounds, and these are recreational areas and for children, and we have no quality, or so that if the child falls and hurts, doesn't get hurt. So they're in the classics in the dirt, in the mud, or in the classic more American that use mulch, which are loose, which are materials that are loose, which when the child falls can get it in his eyes or in his mouth. So it's not advisable to use this type of materials, even when they're used in different places in the world, in Europe or in the US. It's not advisable. So multi-use gyms, these also exist in all the parks, and many times they don't have a surface that buffers the fall. So you get all of the exercise machine, you have nothing to protect you. So these surfaces are precisely for that. We use a product. We have different kinds of certifications: abrasion, fireproof, they don't generate fungus, and impact, which is most important. That when a child falls from a height of 1 or 150, which is normally area of slide, if he falls, the impact doesn't break a wound in his head or cause a cut or anything like that. He can take the blow, but the impact is buffered, and the range of colors that is available. A small comparison, the classic that we see in all the parks: playgrounds with a cast-in-place floor and floor mats, or rugs that are prefabricated. As you can see in the image, which speaks for itself, you can create designs on one, and the other you limit the number of designs and innovation that you can implement. So we did a small comparison of this to measure how we can select this product. This was challenge that we did with two products. This one is in Mérida. So we placed this, and then we have the dates of installation and what happens over a course of 5 years. The color disappears because they are painted rubbers. This exists a lot in the market. Cracks open, and the rugs, they're 60 centimeter pieces to 120, and they open up. So it begins to cause problems in your public space in a short period of time. So you did such a large investment, you placed this floor because you thought it was cheap, and in less than 5 years, it's totally broken up and totally destroyed. But look at the comparison after a couple of weeks or months. It has lost its color, and it lost its properties and characteristics. So we go to a danger challenge with our products. These were installed in public areas in Mexico City. Many of these are still working in spite of the dates that you see here. And as you can see, over 10 years or 8 years, the joints continue to be intact. We see here that they are not cracked or open. There is a coloring change. Obviously, the ultraviolet rays damage it, but we see the dates from 2007 to 2019, and we see the color change. However, the logo continues visible. It's not detached, and the impact continues after 10 years. That has somewhat a hardening of the material, but it lasts double cast in place than the materials of carpets or rugs. Other examples that we can see here, we see a clear example. This is the National Institute of Pediatrics in Mexico City. After what happens with the ABC child care centers, they were looking for products that were resistant to fire, resistant to fungi, and to impact. And we did tests and were selected to do this type of spaces in areas that truly have all of this resistance, so that there's an accident, it doesn't provoke it, because these products don't generate fire nor flames, so they can be very safe. Another example that we can create dynamism with these cast-in-place products. As you can see, we have concrete dunes that were created with materials in the area, and it can be covered with this material. These are the rugs that don't allow you to make these kinds of designs in these spaces. It's not feasible to create a functional and dynamic space for children in such a flat surface, which is what we commonly do. We have created various projects with dunes or different types of coloring, and this helps you for your urban park not to have the colors of the rugs. They have just 3 colors or 4 colors. Here you can create whatever you want. Your imagination with this product is the limit. What is your imagination? We can do it in any project. Likewise, synthetic turf or playgrounds, everybody can sell you synthetic turf. You go to a Home Depot, there's synthetic turf. Here, everybody has synthetic turf. Has anybody approached you to say, my synthetic turf has these characteristics, I recommend this one or this one based on your use, based on your children, or based on your game or your park or your application? Nobody approaches you. We are here to approach you and help you. So we do combinations. We have the turf, and this small segment here is what differentiates us from all our competition, everything that's on the market. We have, for the sports area, we have FIFA Provide, we have for ITF, for rugby, for the sports areas, but we also have different tests, RUSH, which are for ecology, ACTM for impact, for fire, for fungus, Intertech, SCS. So this means that we are truly promoting a high-quality turf, high durability, and high resistance. And the most important, the ecological aspect. Normally, turfs in the market contain these 3 elements. They have heavy metals, they have substances that are harmful for your health. So when you're on a synthetic turf, a common kind you have in the market, and you begin to feel tired or exhausted or hot or out of breath, that turf has heavy metals. So you can see that children or the athletes in a more sports area is tired more quickly, don't yield the same because they don't have the health protector, they don't have the health protector tests, and ultraviolet lights. All turfs are exposed to ultraviolet lights. You put it outside. It's designed for exterior. In less than 3 or 4 years, it begins to change colors. It loses its color. It becomes gray or more intense or hard. And this is precisely because it has no tests, no type of necessary properties, so that your park or your space can truly have durability that you expect and the protection that you expect for the user. So this turf is this artificial or natural? What do you think? Well, this part is totally artificial, and the two lateral ones are natural. If you look at the color, they're very similar, and they behave very similar. We always say the grass is greener on our side, on the other side of the fence. In our case, the grass is greener on our side, and it has more proven durability. So the grass is always greener on our side. And then some examples that we can see how children used to play. This is a school. How do they play in our parks? Do we see the turf with the characteristics of the region and some of the spaces that we can rehabilitate or recondition, combining the synthetic turf with the area of impact of the surface. So we can do many designs and ideas, and there's no reason why it should cost any more. We simply provide greater durability. Other examples that we have done in Universum in Mexico City, we have the part of the Universum, the Aeronautical School in Querétaro, where we created areas with a running track and playground. This other yard that was for a multi-purpose area where camps are held or games. This is in Bioparque Estrella in Jilotepec, and this is also used for other types of application. Instead of a natural turf, only in this area where we have camps and it can be damaged, what they did was create an area which is totally multi-purpose. So they have exhibitions of cars, for events for companies, sports activities, any use, and it's not damaged. Your natural turf is not damaged. The rest of the area is a forest. The entire forest is protected. So instead of having this type of activities in a forest that could be damaged, we seek these spaces that can be multi-purpose for any other activity. Some more examples in child care centers. They're used a lot. We use it in different spaces, and as you can see, there are combinations or also some designs to give texture to the children in all of these games. Likewise, at the bottom, we have more buffering depending on the use and the characteristics. This space is in Chapultepec, Mexico City, Constituyentes Park in Mexico City. It was also, we worked with a campaign company to have the playground, and the area of impact is totally ours. Here we also have different spaces where we've proven that in addition, it's been over 10 years, and obviously there's certain pollution or contamination because of the surrounding. There's mulch actually here, and this has generated some contamination. However, the surface continues to be in good condition with good impact absorption, and it's used every day by children. And another supplementary aspect, art and decoration, we see in the presentations in the Grand Hall where we have these spaces like on Reforma where we see the cows or the skulls, and we have different people participating. Some people say, well, how is this done? Who does the skulls, or how do you make them? Or how can we create an integration of art in our urban park? Well, we can also create these elements to be able to create designs and generate art for people. And people themselves are in contact with this and they can create it. And we have some examples here as well. Art and decoration is part of our public space in our park. We have some of the figures that can be created. At the back you see some images of some charts. And this is transformed in this type of space or surface, what can be reutilized in museums or parks. They can be used in different spaces, which can also be interior or exterior. And it's not just the use that can be given, but the attractiveness. Sometimes it's a figure that looks okay, but it's not useful. So now you have a sculpture, but this sculpture has nothing. This game is just a representation of art. And that's worthwhile. But if art can be functional as well, and you can touch it and it can serve for other elements, so much the better. So here we see this museum, and we have it in the Natural Sciences Museum, and we have these elements which are very viable and very visible for all the public, and they can be touched and played with, like this type of bones that are there for the children to dig them up and play with simulation of mammoth bones in this case. This was done for Six Flags. They had opportunity in Mexico in Six Flags, the Festival of Terror. We placed these elements to create more terror in the park and to be able to interact with zombies or phone booths and so forth, to have other kinds of elements with which to interact in the park. So let's talk a little bit about integration. We have the elements, we have the products, we have everything that has to do with the imaginative part of what I want to do. But likewise, I don't have a group of architects, of engineers that support me in order to be able to adapt it to the space or to my park. Don't worry. Let's do an integration, a general integration at the park, where we need to take into account these elements. First element, the selection of the space. Depending on the space and depending on the region, we can add or take away elements. The consulting, obviously pre, during, and post. If you develop a public park and nobody talked to you or supported you before doing so, you can make mistakes. We can support you from the bottom, from the civil work and how to develop it so it's lasting and so it's a good quality and have all the benefits that you're seeking. As far as specifications and environment, products, quality, and light and time, durability. Manpower. What does manpower have to do with? Expertise, both as far as the labor and the people behind the labor. So many times the labor arrives in places without knowing how to apply resin or turf, and what happens, as good as the product may be in the market, if you use people that don't know how to install these products, it's going to fail. I guarantee that's going to fail. We have people with over 20 years of experience within the company that installs day after day X amount of surfaces every year. This is an example for a project that we're working on for Durango. We've already created the first segment to do the zoning. If you look at by colors, we have a jogging trail, cycling route, and a train route. So the train goes through a much more open area to truly enjoy the park, and that there is no blockage of the areas which are in development, and we create the regions internally. Everything improves as you move inside. Inside we have the cycling path in the middle, and the most central part of the court is the jogging trail. Why don't I do it the other way around? Point number one, the trotter, the jogger, has less degree of impact and use of the track. He's going to spend more time than the bicycle. The cyclist has more time and more distance, and the train can go much farther within your park. So that's why we do these zoning areas. And the pedestrian areas, which are very well marked out. Obviously, there's crossings, and in this way we interact with all the spaces. Subsequently, a greater impact of development, and for project more developed with elements and spaces and surfaces to be able to carry out these projects with more integration and more responsibility for everybody, so that our park can have a responsibility and support for all the users with no need of limiting them. And finally, I would like to thank you for this opportunity. These are some brief reflections, and I am available to you for questions or comments. Please feel free, and thank you for being here. I am available to you. Any questions or comments that you would like to make? I was saying that one of the characteristics that you gave for one of the spaces, and you referred to ABC, that it didn't, it was fireproof. But they are plastics that generate smoke, don't they? Yes, it's true. When I talk about fireproof, they don't generate fire because the flame self-extinguishes. It doesn't propagate. So they're fireproof. We've actually run several tests with different products on the market. And generally we run tests to light it and see how long it retards. One, to light and to self-extinguish. Many of our products are self-extinguishable. If it doesn't self-extinguish, then it spreads, and that's where you generate a lot of smoke. So what happens with smoke? They're plastic. You're right. It's synthetic. However, if it doesn't contain heavy metals, that smoke isn't so toxic that you have to breathe cadmium or magnesium or lead. So with those three, normally we would be breathing that in a synthetic turf. Our products don't have that. So if we have a fire with this impact, that self-extinguishes because the flame doesn't propagate and it doesn't create these vapors with heavy metals. So that is one of the protections that exist. And then the playground, it carbonizes. The flame doesn't spread. You light the flame, and we don't do it here because it would take the alarms. But we can go to the stand and we can put fire to one of our samples, and you can see how it performs. And we can see samples from other companies and see how they perform. And we do a test for all of us that are here to review every one of the products and look at the times and precisely what we discussed, that these are not harmful for your health. They are plastic products, yes, but with very small damage. And they're recyclable. They come from other products. Each one of them have already been raw materials for other products. They could be tires or shoe soles or watches. Sometimes we have a watch with rubber, and when this is no longer good, you just put it in the trash. No, this is ground up. It's converted to virgin rubber to give it a second or third life. Thank you very much. I have a question regarding synthetic turf, because I saw that usually when you have a sports field, you need to have a ground rubber, but I see here that it doesn't have an aggregate of rubber, or I don't know if it's integrated into the surface or how it works. Yes, we have two elements. Indeed, it uses rubber. A sports field must have rubber and sand, because this is what creates the synthetic turf is stiffer for a longer point, and the impact of the player. These rubbers and sands have different characteristics precisely because sand must be silica. Sand doesn't have sharp edges. When you see it in the microscope, they're like octagonal. So when you're in a soccer field or hockey field and you scrape or scratch, it's because the area, the sand is not silicon, it has these sharp edges. The rubber is to produce the yield and performance, the buffering. What happens in playgrounds? We don't recommend this because you go back to the mulch type, which we can have children that eat or have the rubber in their eyes. So we have a rubber base to buffer the fall, and then we have the turf on top to give it the visual. The landscape, we use the color in the landscape. It looks very natural, but it's a much more close-knit turf. We can add some sand, but a very small amount. It's about 10% of the proportion of sand, 30 or 40 millimeters, and the turf goes perhaps 10 millimeters in. So just to give it more stability and to help with the impact of the child. But beyond that, you cannot use sand, and it works in this type of very dense turf. So that's the playground and the sports arena. What is the durability? What is the durability of synthetic turf? For example, we talked about a city, a very hot city, Culiacan, Sinaloa, and what is the recommendation for the use of this type of elements in a city with these high temperatures? Let me tell you a little bit about in Culiacan. First, it's going to be commercial. We have over 20 projects in Culiacan. The High Yield Center, which is in Pitts, is ours. The jogging track, which is in the process of completion, and the bow and arrow area is also created by us. Many of these elements, what we seek is this, the technologies that we use, because we manufacture all of these things, and it's precisely to try to have ultraviolet rays not heat these elements. The turf, in the case of the turf, we import it. The turf is not ours. In Mexico, we haven't located a company that has synthetic turf that is high quality and that can have all these characteristics, that it's good for snow, for rain, for intense heat, or for intense cold or whatever kind of weather. So we import it. We import from number one supplier in the world, which is Sisigras in China. It's called Sesigras, and they have all of these tests that I showed you. One of their characteristics proven is that the turf lowers the temperature up to 2 degrees compared to other turf on the market. You use a thermometer at a peak hour in Culiacan, Hermosillo, or Chihuahua, which are extreme weather, or in the Cabos. We have large projects, or Merida, where there's much moisture, and we also have great projects there. And you can prove that the synthetic turf, the competition and ours, are compared, and you lowers at 2 degrees. 2 degrees may not be very much. When you're at 42, 43, or 45, or 48, you're grateful for it, and especially for the kind of rubber and the proper proportion of rubber and sand in the case of synthetic turf. If you use the proper mix of turf and rubber and sand, this lowers your temperature. If you have more rubber, and it's a rubber that's poor quality, that has heavy metals, this turf, I guarantee, will be warmer. And that's precisely what we discussed. The athlete is running, he gets tired and exhausted because it's hotter, but in addition, because he's inhaling all of these heavy metals. And since I have the microphone, let me say that regarding costs, there's a great difference between the traditional and this innovation or technology. Yes, before talking about costs, you talked about durability. It's between 8 and 10 years where they don't change color, and then they lower the Pantone scale, and they have a durability of 10 to 12 years, with another turf that we have that has about 12 to 14 years. And the installation of the turf, to talk about the cost, the installation is usually done with contact glue, or Resistol 850. This is not designed for exterior, so if you use it exterior, it cracks. And how many times have we seen carpets that are up, and so they're improperly installed. We install with our own polyurethane high resistance glue, and it's guaranteed for 30 years, the gluing of the rug. We have projects in public spaces that have lasted 15 to 20 years, so you see the turf degraded on rough use, but the carpet is still stuck firm. Obviously degraded somewhat, but it's still there. As far as cost, what we saw in the first slide, cost, benefit, durability, it varies a lot on the market. There are turfs are $10 or $12. There's Home Depot. There's a turf $5 per square meter, but you have to add the glue that adds another $1, and you have to use your aggregate, which adds another $3 or $4, and the qualified labor that knows how to install the turf. That's for another $4 or $5. So we're talking about $24, $25 for a square meter. That $5 turf from Home Depot. With us, that could cost you approximately for a square meter $26, $27, with 10 years guarantee in writing and 30 years of guarantee for the carpet, with real materials and real materials that aren't going to do any harm. So we have this variability. The variability is that the market and the type of fiber, the type of health, and for it to be certified and good for health and for the environment. So this is where it varies. There's market for everything. I don't have money to put a $25 or $28 turf. There are different qualities and different levels and different amounts, and turf, and we do a calculation. So whoever wants to sell synthetic turf is not selling. He's trying to push on you a synthetic turf. To see, we have to look at 30 characteristics: height, weight, grammage, aggregates, design, usefulness, what this space is going to be for, a public space, if it's going to be courts or playground or whatever. There's lots of variations so that we can give a real cost of a synthetic turf. Do these materials, are they waterproof? No, they all allow for filtration of water. It has perforations every 10 centimeters, which allows the water to go to the subsoil, so it replenishes the water levels. And the rubber ones, we create a mix of virgin rubber, and it combined with resins that we design from polyurethane that are not harmful for the environment, and they have porosity. So imagine that my fist is the rubber, and it's in this way, and between rubber and rubber we generate bubbles or hollows, gaps that allow it to work as ecocrete, which is totally permeable, but ecocrete is hard. It's concrete. These are soft, so it allows for permeability of the space with no problems. For a soccer field or a sports field, what maintenance does it require and how frequently? It depends on the use. We talked about this last week in another expo. We were talking about each sports activity in a very different talk. It was very specific, and we saw a baseball field. A baseball field are 7,200 square meters, and a soccer field has 7,200 square meters. But in the soccer field, there are 22 players running and jumping, plus the referees, plus the judges, or whatever. And the baseball, there are 3. In 7,000, there are 3 people stepping on the turf. So what does baseball turf require? Practically 0. 3 people are running on it, obviously, because the ultraviolet light and so forth. So there's a couple of machines that are in the market. They comb the turf, and these are called skermets. They're German, they're the best machinery, they're German, and these are machines that brush the turf through these brushes or nails for maintenance. So these resolve the compaction because of rain or use, and in the back it has a vacuum which vacuums whatever particles that are there, maybe cigarette butts or trash or whatever. It cleans it and regenerates. So subsequently, if there's a loss of material, we can do a next layer with new material and mix it to give us second life. It depends upon the use, how long it lasts. It sounds... if your field is 24/7, every day you have 22 players running on the soccer field, and they're there every day. Areas like Culiacan, at night, it's worse than during the day. Hermosillo, it's recommended that it be once a year or once every 8 months, or it depends on the use. We've had fields that we have given maintenance every 2 years. So it really varies a lot, and it depends on the use. In other areas, it likewise depends on the use, but it's like a small binder in playgrounds and a general cleaning with Karcher. And that can also be done once every 3 years or once every 5 years, obviously depending on the use and applications. Thank you very much. Lots of questions. Thank you very much. Hello. Good morning. I have several questions. The first, do you have a product? Our golf green? Yes, with synthetic turf, which is more dense and much smaller. Yes, we do have some. The second question is, in a soccer field, what is necessary around the edges to be able to support or fasten or fix the turf? Do you need concrete around the perimeter, or how is it anchored? It can be anchored in two ways: at the surface itself with a filtrating or rigid base. We place some anchors which are like a V, and you place them every meter or every two rugs or every rug, depending on the width of your rug. But you can place some anchors before the aggregate, and this way you can have your turf somewhat fixed. You don't need to have concrete. Sometimes we use concrete around the perimeter and somewhat high, but every meter you have to leave an exit for water, and these concrete abutments contain some of the aggregates that can come in the future. And the last question, do you recommend installing turf on concrete? Yes, but that's for another use. When you have turf on the floor, it depends on the need. If you have a turf like a rapid soccer or 7 soccer, it can be placed on concrete. That's the way it's used, because the name is rapid football. You need a rigid surface, and what gives you the buffering is precisely the rubber and the turf and the sand. So in the case of playgrounds, we can also place it there, but in playgrounds we recommend using the drainage mat with a buffer or drainage surface, and then the turf, so that we have the buffering surface and the protection for the head of the children. And in the U.S. there is a feedback for football fields. It must have concrete and a drainage mat and 60 centimeter turf with a capacity of 1,400 volume of the rug by regulation. Here in Mexico, that regulation is somewhat lost or neglected, but it exists. Thank you very much. With this, we finish the session, and we'll go to the next session. Thank you very much. My stand is 603, whatever you need. So we'll give you some materials in a moment.